In the last video, I was looking at the Egyptian symbols, Horus and Set. And Set, the donkey, the Set animal, as a donkey or has a donkey head. And Set as a prototype, archetype of the adversary. And he steals Horus's left eye. It's like the fallen projection. However you want to look at it, if it's just symbolic or literal, like a mechanism, I think the moon represents the mechanism for controlling the top layer of reality, the image, or controlling how we perceive reality, and basically making it so we can only see the top layer. Like if you imagine Photoshop layers, there could be many, many different layers, but if the top layer is set to 100% opacity, you're never going to see any of the other layers. And it's like the mirror also. We only see like the surface of the mirror. That's like the moon, the fallen overlay, the anointed cherub that covereth. Like that top Photoshop layer, controlling our perception. Set steals the moon, the control over the image, the overlay. And in all this Masonic stuff, Egyptian, everything in antiquity, it's always male and female. The right half is masculine, the sun. The left half is feminine, the moon. This Manly P. Hall quote, "In ancient times, men fought with their right arms and defended the vital centers with their left arms. The right half of the body was regarded as offensive and the left half defensive." Or you could say like active and passive, or the masculine and feminine principle, creative or receptive. The right side of the body was considered masculine and the left side feminine, and that's still true even today in like special forces or anywhere where they're learning like close combat, knife fighting. It's still going to be this way today. You use your left arm as a shield. You take all the wounds in your left arm to defend your vital center, and you stab with your right arm. The Egyptian word for right is closely related to their word for west. Again, like Solomon's porch going into the setting sun, the east gate of the temple, Easter, being born again. Right, masculine, the sun, is closely related to their word for west. Not where it rises, but where it sets. Where it sets. West is masculine, the sun. And their word for left relates to east. It is thus interesting that the right, i.e. west side of the body, should be associated with life, and the left, i.e. east side, with death. It's kind of opposite of how we usually conceive of it. It's also in this setup, if your right side is west and your left is east, that means you would be facing south with your back to the north. It's also like, I kept showing the car. Remember the red ware car? Like I showed it here in Back to the Future. I showed it in Futurama. And I was talking about Stephen Hawking and Stephen King with the Christine, the killer car. And I think why it's named Christine, and it's always related to the moon, the ware car and the moon. The red car, Esau. And I think it's called Christine, the killer car, Cain, Esau, the killer red car, because it's just like a feminine version of Christ. Christ, Christine. It's that feminine side. Christ, Christine, like the good half, the evil half. And, this isn't just in the occult. This is all, like I said, none of this stuff is really occult. We just don't know, or we forgot, or that middle pillar was broken for us to understand these symbolic traditions. But it's the same in the Bible. In the Bible, it's called the you know, the daughter of Israel. His daughter of Israel has gone a whoring, or the sister, like Dinah, getting raped. It's like, or Eve getting beguiled. Like, they're supposed to cleave together as one flesh, man and woman. It's almost like the collective soul is the feminine. And we need to bring them back together. And again, like I always say, there's like the unclean version where it's all physical, sexual, like, but then there's the inside up version where, you know, you can understand that on a higher level, that you need to be able to rule and obey, to be active and passive. And we're conditioned very strongly against this. Like, you don't want to think of yourself as a woman or having a feminine side, but that's like a stumbling block. That's something you need to come to terms with, because that's how the Bible describes it also. The church is the bride of Christ. It's like the collective soul. It's also why we can't really point to these bad people and, like, if we just get rid of all these bad people doing bad things, everything will be right. But it's not like that, because that's like a result of our collective soul. It's like a manifestation of our collective soul. So you can't just kill the bad people, like, or they're like mushrooms. They'll just keep springing up. We need to fix it in the collective soul. That's why you can't really blame anyone. They know not what they do. It's all about personal responsibility. It's also like the cup of wrath. But it's also like to rule yourself and to rule the world, that you have to drink from that cup of wrath and say, yeah, this is my fault. Personal responsibility. Like when the disciples say, James and John, sons of Zebedee, can we sit on your right and your left hand and rule in heaven? And Jesus says, do you think you can drink of this cup that I'm going to drink from? And they say, yeah, we can drink from the cup, but they don't understand. But Jesus says, yeah, you're right. You are going to drink from the cup that I drink from and be baptized with the baptism that I'm baptized with. But they don't really understand at that point what that means. But yeah, Christine, Christ, Christine, evil, feminine. The fallen overlay image, the moon. Also, while I was scanning Back to the Future again, I saw multiple new things, which is insane. I've seen this movie so many times. It seems impossible to just keep seeing more and more stuff. But this red car, the were car, Esau, right in the beginning of the first one, right in the opening scene, he's about to go into school. And the girlfriend says, no, Marty, don't go in. Strickland's looking for you. You got to go around the back way. And it's like the school blocking the gates. He can't go in this way. Like, shut up the kingdom of heaven. It says Esau right here. You see it, the graffiti? Esau. It's like the red bag and the red can. It's like the vessel, the red car. The vessel, the red container. Esau, red all over. And they walk down, and it says Ozzy Wizard. Esau and Ozzy Wizard. Like, I did the Black Sabbath episode. Like, I think this also has something to do with the moon. Like, Black Sabbath, master of reality. It's like the Black Sabbath is the new moon Sabbath. But, like, it's just crazy how the stuff just keeps sprouting up. They're like plants. You put your attention on it, and they just keep growing up. But so I did Set, the donkey, and we looked at the lion a lot in the last video. So in this one, I'm going to do the donkey. Not looking at pictures of donkeys, more the stories. Like, what is this symbol of the donkey? What does it represent? And I'll look at the few different stories in the Bible. The ass is the only other animal that speaks in the Bible. There's only the serpent in the garden and the ass, Balaam's ass. The only two speaking animals in the Bible. And, you know, Jesus' triumphal entry into Jerusalem down from the Mount of Olives is he rides on an ass or two asses, an ass and a colt, the foal of an ass. It's a little different in each gospel. But, you know, you could say, well, that's just the story. That's just what happened. But I don't think anything's like that. It says his teachings and deeds could fill 10,000 books. There's not enough books on earth to fill it. Like, every book, every story in the Bible could be thousands of pages long. It's like a zip file. It's like the whole thing. They're like symbolic stories. Doesn't mean they didn't really happen, but it means they happened for a reason to teach you something. And they're like super condensed. So every element of the story means something. It's not just like Charles Dickens getting paid by the letter, paid by the word. To me, it all means something. And to me, the symbols don't just mean one thing. That's like the deception, the satanic deception, where they, like I said, the Photoshop layer, the fallen overlays turned to like 100% opacity. So they want everyone to think like it's just this sexual thing or like this black magic evil thing, like Ezekiel. They're always covered in dung because our staff's been broken and we have to eat our bread with the Gentiles. And I think the ass does have something to do with that. Like the serpent is like the wisdom of men, always go in the dust, always deceptive. And the ass is like humble, the beast of burden, like it's just doing its job, driving the plow, whatever, and it's just carrying humbly these symbols through time. And the rulers like Balaam, they ride on the ass, but basically just because God lets them for the story. They don't actually control the ass. Just like in Back to the Future, they don't really control the car. They think they're controlling the car, traveling all through time, but really they're not. The car is in control. Like if you watch the movie at all, whenever the car just turns off or turns back on randomly. But that's what makes the story work. That's the synchronicity. That's the Deus Ex Machina. The God in the machine is like that synchronicity. Like if you remember at the end of the first one, right when he's about to make his run to hit the lightning wire and go back to the future, the car stalls out. And he's like, no, why? And he's banging his head. And it finally starts up again. And he goes and he hits it, boom, hits the lightning right on time. But like if the car hadn't have turned off, he would have been early. He would have missed the lightning. It's like those synchronicities. The rabbit trails like follow the white rabbit and everything, and Donnie Darko and The Matrix and Monty Python, the Holy Grail. Always with the rabbit, it's like these Easter eggs, like little clues from somewhere from a higher reality, like or beyond the Photoshop layer we can see. But that's how you know you're on time. You're doing your purpose. Like you see the synchronicities and you know you're right on time.
Listen, you gotta help. This is nuts. Wait a minute. I got all the time I want. I got a time machine. I can just go back early and warn them. Okay. 10 minutes after.
Bluebird Motel.
Time circuit's on. Flux capacitor. Fluxing. Engine running. Right. No. No. Come on, come on. Come on. Please, please, come on. Time. Oh my gosh. No. No, not again. Like that, let's get our asses back to the future. You don't want to get struck by lightning.
So they think they're controlling the car, but they're not controlling the car. And the Easter eggs following the rabbit holes, like in Donnie Darko, it's a rabbit through the mirror, through the looking glass also. Whether they seem good or bad, it's just what has to happen for the story. And the same thing with what I'm talking about, like the unclean overlays over all the symbols. Like, Back to the Future has a ton of this, where it's like always sexual stuff, like sodomy or butt stuff or just gross stuff. But that's just one way to look at it. That's like how we're seeing it. And the overlay is always going to be scary. And like Set, the serpent, the adversary, like whether it seems good or bad, we need an adversary. You need adversity. That's what the resistance is, what we experience as meaning. With no resistance, there's no story. Like, everything was good and we had fun, the end. That's not a story. Without resistance, without adversity, nothing changes. There's no meaning. So a good story needs a great adversary. So yes, in one way, like, the foundations of the earth are out of course. This is what's kind of like unique to Abrahamic religions, is like it recognized like there's something really wrong with the world. It's not just like nature's nice and it's like Isaiah, like no, it should be like the lion will lay with the lamb, or the wolf with the lamb, and eat grass and like be like plants. It's like the foundations of the earth are out of course. But it's also like part of the story. Like it needs to be scary. It needs it for you to grow. Set, like that's what makes the fruit ripen. So are things bad? Yeah, but it's like the blue marble guy. Yeah, things are bad, but they have to be. Yes, it is photoshopped, but it has to be. Like, it is photoshopped. We are only seeing this top distorted, scary layer, but it has to be. And it's like a challenge for us. Like, there's all these symbols, like the cock and the ass are very related. It's symbolic tradition. The cock is all through symbolic tradition, but in the Bible, it's associated with Peter. You'll deny me 3 times before the cock crows. It's always 3 times, too. I want to do a whole video about that. But the cock, Peter, is also the stone of truth. Whoever falls on this stone shall be broken, but on whomsoever it shall fall, it will grind him to powder. And there's this relationship between the cock and the ass, finding the stone of truth in this symbolic tradition. But you can hear me just saying it. You're gonna hear filthy like overlays of meaning, which is like to keep you out. That's like the bread in the dung, like the cock in the ass. You find the cock in the ass. Like, yeah, it sounds terrible, but that's just one way of looking at it. That's because we're like in this lower animal sexual mind. But that's not the real meaning. It's just one meaning. Like, there's infinite layers of meaning. But if you're trapped, if you can only think in that base, gross sexual level, it's a stumbling block to you. And yes, so they're all overlaid as this boundary, like in Back to the Future, the cock and the ass. There is all this like sodomy and filthy stuff overlaid over it. Just like Jesus says, you know, in heaven, after this age, after this world, you'll be like above sexuality. You don't marry or are given in marriage, but you're like unto the angels. You're united, like cleaved together into one flesh, the marriage. He's talking about it like that, like being above sexuality. Then you have the, and this is fruitful. These are all like good to meditate on and learn things and come to new levels of understanding. But if you're stuck in like the Baphomet, which is like the unclean overlay, where rather than being non-sexual above sexuality, it's like the inversion. It's like hypersexual, male and female. And it's like this for everything. Like the Ouroboros with they'll put like the human centipede over it, or like a sexual 69, or some kind of sodomy thing. And all the symbols are overlaid like this. But that's just how we're seeing them. Like we're seeing this scary reflection in the mirror. But if you understand that what goes into you doesn't defile you, what comes out of you, like just seeing something bad isn't going to make you bad. Like you have to know yourself, know who you are, and you're not afraid. You can look through the layer and see the other truer, higher meanings behind the unclean overlay.
And finally, I looked in the mirror. Not just in the mirror. I looked through the mirror. In that image, I saw my ego reflection. Looked in the mirror. Not just in the mirror. I looked through the mirror. I looked through the mirror. Through the mirror.
Red hair.
How can you do that? I can do anything I want. So can you.
Like the whole story of Donnie Darko is, you know, he's supposed to get killed by the plane engine. And he's saved by the rabbit, but then all this scary, seemingly horrible stuff is happening to him, and it just almost seems like a conspiracy. Like everyone's conspiring subconsciously against him. And it's this really scary overlay in the mirror of this evil rabbit leading him around through time, through synchronicities. But ultimately, it all ends up to ultimately make him understand and for him to overcome his fear so he can just accept life as a story and as a, you know, to understand, to not be afraid to go ahead. So at the end, he goes and smiles and gets back in his bed and goes to sleep. Like it seems scary, but it's for a purpose. The adversary, the resistance is for a purpose.
When the other rabbits hear of Fiver's vision, do they believe him?
Why should we care?
Fiver, five-man, E-man,
Because the
Fiver.
rabbits are us, Donnie. You're wrong. Because the rabbits are us, Donnie. You're wrong. These rabbits can talk. They're the product of the author's imagination, and he cares for them, so we care for them. Otherwise, we've just missed the point. But aren't we forgetting about the miracle of storytelling? The Deus Ex Machina, the God machine?
The de ex machina, the god machine. That's what saved the rabbits. That's what saved the rabbits. Because the rabbits are us, Donnie.
So the question is, and this is going to be about the ass, Set, the adversary, and the serpent. The ass and the serpent, the two talking animals. But why? Why symbolic tradition? Like, why does Jesus only speak in parables? Why doesn't he just come out and say it? Like, if he wanted you to know, if he could just tell you, of course, you would think he would just tell you. But he doesn't. It's always a parable, which is a symbolic story. Or in art, like great artists that seem to know something about reality. And you find all these things encoded in artwork. You know, just like a parable is a symbolic story, encoded artwork is a symbolic image. Or music, like all the arts, architecture. It can be a visual image, an acoustic image, or a tactile image. But you have like religion, scripture, the symbolic stories. You have art, the symbolic images, and you have science, the tradition all down through the ages, which I would say are symbolic concepts. And when we're really observing the outside world closely, it's really showing us, it's a mirror. It's showing us something about consciousness, about the inside world. But why? Why not just come out and say it? Why the symbolic traditions? Why does it all have to be in symbols? So why symbols? Why do objective truths or universal truths, why can't they be specific? Why does it have to be implied, symbolic? I think we have this idea about our language that it can describe anything. You know, if you think about it, you can arrange words in such a way to describe any experience or any concept. But that's not really true. Our language is basically just like a 2D, two-dimensional representation of reality. Like, that's all it can describe. It's like drawing shapes on a flat piece of paper. And on a flat piece of paper, you can't actually make a three-dimensional shape out of a flat piece of paper. You can't make a cube out of a flat piece of paper. In order to actually make a cube, you have to cut the paper. But you can imply a cube on a flat piece of paper. Like a hexagon, a star of David. You can't actually create a cube without cutting the paper, but you can imply a cube with a hexagon. And I think that's what the symbols are like. They're like higher dimensional truths, higher layers of reality. It's like you're looking through the mirror. You're seeing through that unclean, the fallen overlay, set to full opacity, so you can't see any of the other layers of reality. So the symbols are like, in our language, it's like a lower dimensional shape, like a hexagon, implying a higher dimensional idea. So that a linear storyline or a linear image or a linear scientific concept can imply a non-linear, a fractal, higher dimensional concept. Or another example I can think of is like electricity. Electricity isn't like have a substantial body. You can't grab a hold of a piece of electricity. It can grab a hold of you, but you can't grab a hold of it. It's not physical in that sense, that it has a permanent physical form or a sustained physical form, but we can build a circuit board or an electrical grid And in the same way that the electrical components made of physical material stuff, copper, glass, ceramic, rubber, create a physical grid along which the non-physical electricity can be transmitted. It's like the living word. Like the physical word is the law, the scripture, the art, the science is like the grid. It's like a mechanism, like a carrier wave for this higher dimensional information to ride on. So Jesus always speaks in parables, and this is Paul. 2 Corinthians 12:4. It is not expedient for me doubtless to glory. I will come to visions and revelations of the Lord. I knew a man in Christ above 14 years ago. 14, like in the beginning of Matthew. It's all in segments of 14 generations. Whether in the body I cannot tell, or whether out of the body I cannot tell. God knoweth. Such a one caught up to the third heaven. Like, they had some more understanding than we do now. Like from the Holy Spirit. They know about angels and different levels of heavens and different, you could call it dimensions. But the third heaven, like, they know what that means. He writes it expecting that people will know what it means. And I knew such a man, whether in the body or out of the body, I cannot tell, God knoweth. How that he was caught up into paradise and heard unspeakable words, which it is not lawful for a man to utter. Like, so he's called up into the third heaven, and he hears unspeakable words, like, information, truth, up in a higher reality, heard unspeakable words, which it is not lawful for a man to utter. Like, it's not possible, like, not lawful as in the laws of reality, the laws of God, the laws of the universe. Not just like, hey, you better not tell them. It's like, no, it's not law. It's against the laws of reality. There's no way to say it. That's what I think it means. Heard unspeakable words, which it is not lawful for a man to utter. So that's why you need the parables, the symbolic tradition. Or in Daniel, what does this mean? But thou, O Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book, even to the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased. So he's hearing things, he's getting information, but he needs to shut up the words, seal up the book. It's not lawful for man to utter. And again, like it says in the Gospels, we'll come to it later, but they didn't understand a lot of it while it was happening. It's like a car accident or some crazy event. It's like one thing after another. It's very eventful, packed with information. It says when it's happening, they don't understand, but later, once Jesus was gone and ascended, then they remembered what they did and what he said and everything. And everyone, is seeing a subjective reality. Everyone has a different angle on it. And the same thing with art. Like, I think a lot of good art, some artists, or even science, but some artists might have some understanding of how it's working. Some might not. Might just be totally intuitive. But I think what good art is, what they're really doing is just not really like crafting things, because on a human level with your brain, you can never make things that great or that hit on all these different symbolic levels, and are synchronized with the reality. You can only do that like subconsciously. So the best artists, I think, are just kind of reaching into this black box of their subconscious and just feeling around and just pulling stuff out of their subconscious. And they don't necessarily know exactly what it means, but it's a feeling. It feels meaningful on symbolic levels. Daniel 12:9, and I heard, but I understood not. Like, doesn't even necessarily understand what it is. He knows he's supposed to write it or say it. And I heard, but I understood not. Then said I, O my Lord, what shall be the end of these things? And he said, go thy way, Daniel. Like, just do your thing. Don't worry about it. He said, go thy way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed till the time of the end. Many shall be purified and made white and tried, but the wicked shall do wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand, but the wise shall understand. It's not for everyone to understand. You know, Jesus says, he who has ears, let him hear. Like, who's supposed to understand is going to understand it. And everyone doesn't have to understand everything at a super high level, but that, you know, everyone just needs to understand enough for them to believe. And it's going to be different for everyone. Like Paul, like, because it's like the daughter of Israel, like the collective soul. Like Paul says, the best way to understand it is like a body. Like we're all parts or cells of a body. And a body's always going to have a head. It needs to have a head. Someone who understands at the highest levels or people, but it needs to be the right head, the Godhead. Like, but everyone just needs to understand enough to believe. That's the only important part, is that you believe so you can experience the best things, the right things, or, you know. So the story goes the right way. But you do need to there needs to be people that can, you know, give people whatever level of understanding they need to believe. Because you can't really, I don't think you can believe something you don't understand. It doesn't make sense if you think about it. How can you believe something if you don't understand what it is? It seems like you can only say that you believe something you don't understand. You can say you believe something you don't understand, but you can't actually believe something you don't understand. So everyone just needs to understand enough for them to believe, and for whatever reason, some people, it's going to be different for everyone. But if you're like, yeah, I believe, I get it, would be good. You know, a physician is sent to the sick, not to the well. If they're good and they're fruitful and their fruit's good, and it's, you know, just let them live their life. Live your life. And like the Greek Roman version of this, you know, here the higher dimensional thing, heavenly things, it's not lawful to utter, is Cassandra. Cassandra, a priestess of Apollo in Greek mythology, cursed to utter true prophecies, but never to be believed. In modern usage, her name is employed as a rhetorical device to indicate someone whose accurate prophecies are not believed. That background picture is Absalom. Absalom's ass, who tries to take the kingship, like from Solomon, basically. Or while David's still alive, drives David out of Jerusalem. Her cursed gift from Apollo became an endless pain and frustration to her. She was seen as a liar and a madwoman by her family and by the Trojan people. In some versions, she was often locked up in a pyramidal building, locked in the pyramid, on the citadel on the orders of her father, King Priam. Reminds me of Hiram, Tyre. She was accompanied there by the wardress, who cared for her under orders to inform the king, think of her prophecies. She speaks disconnectedly and transcendent in the grip of her psychic possession by Apollo, witnessing past and future events. Shine says, she evokes the same awe, horror, and pity as do schizophrenics. Cassandra is one of those who often combine deep, true insight with utter helplessness and who retreat into madness. She goes to her inevitable offstage murder by Clytemnestra with full knowledge of what is to befall her. And what I mean by everyone experiencing or perceiving like a subjective reality rather than what's actually there, or the original root note, the true organic reality, is like there's two ways of looking at it. The first way is that what's really there is basically just like a framework, a skeleton, like a wire frame, or like a grid, a matrix, just basically a pattern with no inherent specific meaning in and of itself. It's just it's just like a pattern. And by observing it, you flesh it out. You color it in like a coloring book. You flesh it all out around the skeleton yourself. And everyone does that differently based on their pattern and conditioning and their brain and their experiences and memories and whatever makes up their whole pattern, their self. Like maybe what's there is just a square, just an 8x8 square. And all we can really describe in language, physical language, on the lower reality is basically just saying, hey, do you see a square? Yeah, I see a square. Is it 64 square feet, 8x8? Yeah, I agree. That's what I see too. But really, like, one person could be seeing a red square. One person could be seeing it's a square of green grass. One person could be seeing a fish tank filled with water. One person could be seeing a floral patterned bed sheet. But our language, that's higher dimensional, like the color and pattern and all the different qualities, like, can't be expressed in language. So we all assume we're looking at the same thing, even though they're totally different. But we all say, hey, do you see that 8x8 square? And they say, yeah, I see that 8x8 square. So that's the first way. The second way is that it's not a framework. It is like objective, what's really there. There is an objective reality with an objective meaning, but it's so densely packed with information. Like there's so much going on in every square inch of reality that we filter it down to just a very tiny fraction. Our attention is only focused on a very tiny fraction. So it's kind of like a crazy abstract painting. And you could see, hey, look, it's an elephant. You see that? And you can show it and it's true. Yeah, I see that elephant. Like this painting. Or you could say, no, I see a skull with a little door in his forehead. And that's true too, because it's in the pattern. But there's so infinite things in the pattern. No, I see a flock of birds all circling around a flower. And that's why basically control of the narrative is control of reality. Our consensus reality is just whatever you can get people to believe. The best story, that's reality, because there's infinite interpretations of it. But if everyone agrees that it's the elephant, and you're like, I thought it was a flock of birds. I'm like, no, dude, what are you talking about? It's an elephant. Like, if you're the only one, eventually you'll say, oh, I guess I'm wrong. And you'll snap into the elephant story interpretation. But it's just one of infinite interpretations of the story. Because we can't see all that information. We just select a very small fraction. So it's the same way, like, so either way, whether it's just a minimal pattern or whether it's an extremely dense, objective reality, either way, I see a green square, you see a red square, someone else sees a water square, a bed sheet, and they're all true in that they all fit the pattern. They all overlay properly with that pattern. But none of them are necessarily what's actually there, objective. because that can't be really expressed in physical language. It's not lawful for man to utter. This is in Matthew, the triumphal entry, Jesus riding on the ass. And when they drew nigh unto Jerusalem, and were come to Bethphage, unto the Mount of Olives, then sent Jesus 2 disciples, saying unto them, Go into the village over against you, and straightway ye shall find an ass tied, and a colt with her. Loose them, and bring them unto me. And if any man say aught unto you, ye shall say, The Lord hath need of them, and straightway he will send them. All this was done, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by the prophet, saying, Tell ye the daughter of Sion, like the daughter of Israel, Behold, thy king cometh unto thee, meek, and sitting upon an ass, and a colt the foal of an ass. And the disciples went and did as Jesus commanded them, and brought the ass and the colt, and put on them their clothes, and they set him thereon. And a very great multitude spread their garments in the way. Others cut down branches from the trees, and strawed them in the way. And the multitudes that went before and that followed cried, saying, Hosanna to the Son of David. Blessed is he that cometh in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest. And when he was come into Jerusalem, all the city was moved, saying, Who is this? And the multitude said, This is Jesus, the prophet of Nazareth of Galilee. And Jesus went into the temple of God, and cast out all them that sold and bought in the temple, and overthrew the tables of the money changers, and the seats of them that sold doves, and said unto them, It is written, My house shall be called the house of prayer, but ye have made it a den of thieves. And the blind and the lame came to him in the temple, and he healed them. So he rides upon the ass. That's like him claiming the kingship. They always ride upon the ass, like David, and then Absalom tries to do it, but he puts Solomon on the ass. I'll go through all that. But yeah, I think this represents like the symbolic tradition, and I'll continue to show that. But you can see his triumphal entry. He rides on the ass and the colt, the foal of an ass, and he goes straight into the temple and cleanses the temple, and overthrew the tables of the money changers, like the fallen image, the moon eye, the left eye, the moon in the temple. Overthrew the tables of the money changers and the seats of them that sold doves, like false peace, 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 but there is no peace. The Antichrist shall come as a man of peace. And the temple, the house of God, how I was talking about it, it's like yourself, the man and the woman, but also the spiral. It's also like the Tower of Babel, like breaking the language down. But that is the symbols. The symbol set. The symbol set the donkey, the adversary that's actually serving a purpose, like to cause the fruit to bloom, to ripen. But Jesus rides upon the ass straight into the temple. And you can think of it like the language, or like setting the symbols straight, giving us the proper interpretation of the symbols again. To restore that pillar, that east gate. It's also called the beauty gate, or the water gate. You see it's broken right at beauty, like in Acts when they're going into the temple. I think it's Peter and John. There's a leper sitting in the beauty gate crying out to them. It's like, you can't go in because the beauty, it's broken at beauty. Like, you see all this stuff that looks bad, terrible in the world, and you can't understand. You can't get back to contact God because you can't understand why the world would be like this. So him riding the ass, the symbolic tradition, straight into the temple to cast out the money changers. It's like the people that have control of the symbols, the fallen image, the moon eye, the people that are controlling the symbolic tradition, there's like two ways you can use it. Outward, downward, material, which is like the unclean way, like in all the things you have to do that way to break down your shame, which is like bad things, sacrifice, sodomy, whatever. Or the inside way, you can use it instead of trying to change the world, control the outside world, you can project them inside and change yourself. And then it does make sense. Boom, you can see the beauty of it. But it's like them, like Balaam riding the ass, it's like they preserve the symbols for a bad reason, because it gives them control, power, but evil for good, like it serves the purpose to preserve them. Like the material forces preserve them without understanding, like seal the words up till the time of the end. The wise shall be purified, made white, and understand, but the wicked shall not understand, but shall do wickedly. But like they're serving a purpose, the adversary, they're preserving the symbols. And Jesus comes to give you access again, set the symbol straight. No, that doesn't have to be this weird sodomy, Baphomet, transgender thing. It's like above that. It's like, you know, above sexuality, like under the angels, and all these different kinds of things. And like this, what I was showing, the combat of the two natures, Jacob and Esau, they each drop half, just like in the tower thing, a gold nugget below each of them. They each drop half. It's like the birthright and the blessing. Like Esau sells him his birthright, and he kind of gets the blessing by trickery from Isaac. But it's like the outside and the inside, like all the way back to Abraham. The birthright of the blessing, like the one is like material, like nations from you, and your seed shall be like the sand of the sea. But the other one is like the symbolic tradition, the inside, which he gets from Melchizedek, come and blesses him, the king over Salem, Jerusalem. And like, but then it's broken off, the pillar, the connection's broken off. So then Jesus comes back and sets it straight, high priest forever, after the order of Melchizedek, to like restore the symbolic tradition, restore the middle path, the narrow gate. And it's like the priesthood, the king needs the priesthood. Like the keepers of the symbolic tradition are like the priests, the doctors, and the lawyers. It's like art, science, and scripture. Like priests are art, they hold the images. The doctors, like in the New Testament, that's who's all in the temple arguing with Jesus. The judges and lawyers are like scripture, symbolic stories, the law. The doctors are like science, symbolic scientific concepts, and the priests are like art. They hold the images, the idols, and all that stuff. And it just happens to line. I mean, that's the symbol of the ass or the mule, donkey, set. But it also happens to line up with these art, science, scripture, ass, and the living word, you know, the golden thread everywhere. Or ars, artistic, religious, scientific, esoteric. But I don't really include esoteric, because really art, science, and scripture, all the head, the top of all these symbolic traditions is the esoteric. Like it's always the hidden meaning, which is the unclean meaning, always at the top, at the secret top of all these symbolic traditions, art, science, and religious, or scripture. But the king or the rulers need to ride on this symbolic tradition. They need to ride this to rule. They need these priests, doctors, and lawyers. That's what gives them power, is the symbols, the symbolic tradition. And this is the same story in John. John 12:12. On the next day, much people that were come to the feast, when they heard that Jesus was coming to Jerusalem, took branches of palm trees and went forth to meet him, and cried, Hosanna, blessed is the King of Israel that cometh in the name of the Lord. And Jesus, when he had found a young ass, sat thereon, as it is written, Fear not, daughter of Sion, behold, thy king cometh, sitting on an ass's colt. These things understood not his disciples at the first, but when Jesus was glorified, then remembered they that these things were written of him, and that they had done these things unto him. So these things they understood not at the first, but when Jesus was glorified later, then they remembered. And they have to figure it all out. They have to formulate the narrative, because that's not how reality really happens. That happens only in our imagination, in either the past or the future. That's the only place the linear narrative of a story exists. The reality is it's just like a simultaneous event. It's just like, everything's happening at once. It's not a linear thing. We have to formulate that in our imagination. It's always either in the past or in the future. So they remembered everything later. That's one reason why there's, different versions. It even tells you that they're all experiencing different things. Like here, John 12:27. Now is my soul troubled, and what shall I say? Father, save me from this hour, but for this cause came I unto this hour. It's the whole reason I'm here. Father, glorify thy name. Then came there a voice from heaven. Okay? Their voice comes out of the sky, booms down from heaven. Then came there a voice from heaven saying, I've both glorified it and will glorify it again. The people, therefore, that stood by and heard it said that it thundered. Others said, an angel spake to him. So it's telling you right here that the people, it depends on what they believe and their level of awareness and their pattern, their subjective reality. Some people, a voice comes from heaven. Some people hear it and say, wow, it was God. Some people say an angel spake to him. Others says it thundered. They can't experience that because it's not part of their belief set. They're all experiencing it different. Just like Jesus looks different to everyone. And he can just all of a sudden disappear. They can't see him anymore in the middle of the crowded temple. He just walks right through them all. It's it's different for everyone that we can't see. And so that's why I think there's little differences. The symbols are the same in all the versions, but there's little differences in everything because people are experiencing it differently, and they're all true because they all fit the pattern, the symbol. But it's if you're standing on the beach of 10 different people, they're all miles apart, looking at the sun, the sunset. They're all seeing the same sun, and they all see that band of light, the reflection on the water. They all see it directly in front of them. Even though their miles could be 5 miles apart, they all see the same sun and the same reflection. It's directly in front of all of them. But if there's birds and boats, foreground, medium ground, far out, and buoys out in the water, those things are going to be different from every different angle. Even though the sun and the light is directly in front of you, it's the same. But they're all going to have a different perspective on the events or the objects. And what I mean about reality doesn't really work like that. You have to formulate a linear narrative. Either you imagine in the future, oh, I bet this will happen, and then that, and that'll make this happen. And if that happens, then this could happen. In your imagination, in the future, projecting. But it's exactly the same in the past. Events don't just exist already somewhere or in your mind in a linear narrative. You have to formulate that in your periods of rest, motion and rest. But in in the moment, in the motion, it's not like that. It's just like a ball of, just like an event, this crazy gestalt swirling simultaneous thing. Like it's not a linear narrative. So when they go back, they understood not at first, but when Jesus was glorified, then remembered they that these things were written of him and that they had done these things unto him. Like, if you're in just crazy events like this, super high information motion, like if you're like in a car accident and you hit a deer, boom, and then you slam on the brakes and the deer goes flying off to the right to the side of the road, you slam, boom, you get rear-ended. And the dude gets out, your wife's driving, the dude comes up to your wife, starts screaming at her, and he's about to punch out her window, and then boom, he gets hit by another car, and you get smashed off the road. And all of a sudden, you're down there next to the deer in the grass, and all of a sudden it pops up, it's not dead, and it runs off into the woods. And then you're sitting in the police station, you got a blanket on and a cup of coffee, and they're like, sir, we need your statement, tell us what happened. It's not, you have to think about it. You have to be like, this guy was yelling at it. Well, no, first we hit a deer. And when we stopped, this guy came up, then we got rear-ended. And the deer you have to formulate that. It doesn't like exist already in some recorded memory because that's not reality. Reality is whatever people believe. It's just a consensus. But like what we see as reality is always going to be subjective. It's not a linear narrative. We have to formulate that. So everyone's formulations are maybe correct as long as they fit the pattern. But they're all going to be a little different. And the first reference to this is in Genesis. Jacob's prophecies, I think he says for the last days, but to the 12 tribes of Israel, which seem more and more to me as like 12 types, like personality types or something like that, 12 archetypes. Binding his foal unto the vine and his ass's colt unto the choice vine. Jesus is the true vine. He washed his garments in wine and his clothes in the blood of grapes, like red all over. You come down into physicality, into beast, animal mind, like Nebuchadnezzar. His eyes shall be red with wine. I think that's spirit. Wine to me is always like spirit, filled with spirit, and his teeth white with milk. It's like power, pure spiritual power. Like people have dreams about losing their teeth. It's usually symbolic of like a loss of power. Like the lion's power is his teeth. I'll go back a little bit and run through a few of these. It's when Jacob's dying, and said in Egypt, gather yourselves together that I may tell you that which shall befall you in the last days. The last days. Gather yourselves together and hear, ye sons of Jacob, and hearken unto Israel your father. Reuben, the red son. Reuben, the firstborn, just like Esau. Reuben, thou art my firstborn, my might, and the beginning of my strength, the excellency of dignity and the excellency of power. Unstable as water, thou shalt not excel, because thou wentest up to thy father's bed, then defiledest thou it. He went up to my couch. So that's how Reuben loses his birthright. He's the firstborn, but he goes in under his father's concubine. And it's like lust, the red car, the beast mind. And same thing I'll show you in a minute with Absalom. Absalom also goes up onto the roof into David's concubines also. It's like same thing. He loses his birthright. He gets yanked off the ass. But it's like, Reuben, Ruby. Simon and Levi are brethren. Instruments of cruelty are in their habitations. It's the priest, Levi. Instruments of cruelty are in their habitations, in their selves. That's what I'm thinking. It's like personality types, aspects. O my soul, come, see, O my soul, the daughter of Israel, come not thou into their secret of like the priesthood, like of the bad, like symbolic traditions, which is like the bad way of, you know, doing things to get material power, where you do beastly things. O my soul, come not thou into their secret of the priesthood, unto their assembly. Mine honor be not thou united. For in their anger they slew a man, like Absalom, and in their self-will they dig down a wall. It's like going in somewhere where you're not supposed to go in yet, or thinking you can solve things materially, like wrestling with the Lord physically, like the pride, thinking that you can judge and set things right with like violence. Cursed be their anger, for it was fierce, and their wrath, for it was cruel. I will divide them in Israel, and I will divide them in Jacob, and scatter them in Israel. Now, I think this has to do with like this like the separating also, like between the kingship and the symbolic tradition, like the priesthood, and like he gives the blessing to Joseph's Egyptian sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. And the birthright, the right to like rule, power physically, he gives to Judah, the lion. And I think Jesus like brings them back together again. Judah, thou art he whom thy brethren shall praise. Thy hand shall be in the neck of thine enemies. I think of like the voice, the word, you know, the language. Thy hand shall be in the neck of thine enemies. Thy father's children shall bow down before thee. Judah is a lion's whelp. From the prey, my son, thou art gone up. He stooped down, he couched as a lion, and as an old lion, who shall rouse him up? The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet until Shiloh come, and unto him shall the gathering of the people be. Like the people who are in charge, the rulers, are there for a reason. Like, and it's not going to change until Christ comes. Like, because it's not an accident, the way things are. I feel like the old lion, a lawgiver shall not depart from Judah until Shiloh come. I think it's about, like, you know, the pride, the lion, the basest of men, rulers, supposed to be like that until whatever is supposed to happen happens. I also feel like this Nebuchadnezzar, this is us. I don't know what that means exactly, but let his heart be changed from man's, and let a beast's heart be given unto him, and let 7 times pass over him. But down here, verse 17, the Most High ruleth in the kingdom of men, and giveth it to whomsoever he will, and setteth up over it the basest of men. So the scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet until Shiloh come, and unto him shall the gathering of the people be. Binding his foal unto the vine, and his ass's colt unto the choice vine. And Jesus is the true vine. It's like that symbolic tradition, the living word that runs all through reality, all through time and everywhere. Like, that's what ties it all together. The main storyline, like the lifeline, binding his foal and his ass's colt unto the choice vine, like the symbolic tradition, bound to that, to the vine. Out of Asher his bread shall be fat, and he shall yield royal dainties. Naphtali is a hind let loose. He giveth goodly words. I think that's interesting because it says Hiram is a widow's son of the tribe of Naphtali. which is weird. I never knew he was an Israelite before, but I just noticed that recently, that he's of the tribe of Naphtali. And a hind is a red deer. I have it on here somewhere, but a red deer, a hind let loose, he giveth goodly words. And obviously, Hiram is like central to like the Masonic traditions. A hind let loose, like it's like the secrets, the goodly words, the symbolic tradition, like let loose. He's like out of Israel. And Joseph gets the blessing. His sons get the blessing. Joseph is a fruitful bough, even a fruitful bough by a well, whose branches run over the wall. The archers have sorely grieved him and shot at him and hated him, but his bow abode in strength, and the arms of his hands were made strong by the hands of the mighty God of Jacob. From thence is the shepherd, the stone of Israel. So by Joseph, Judah is the lawgiver, the scepter, the rulers, but it goes to Joseph. From thence is the shepherd, the stone of Israel, the stone of truth. Even by the God of thy father, who shall help thee, and by the Almighty, who shall bless thee with blessings of heaven above, blessings of the deep that lieth under, blessings of the breasts and of the womb. The blessings of thy father have prevailed above the blessings of my progenitors unto the utmost bound of the everlasting hills. They shall be on the head of Joseph. The blessing shall be on the head of Joseph, and on the crown of the head of him that was separate from his brethren. Benjamin shall raven as a wolf. In the morning he shall devour the prey, and at night he shall divide the spoil. All these are the 12 tribes of Israel, and this is it that their father spake unto them, and blessed them. Every one according to his blessing he blessed them. Like they're all different. It's all like different aspects. And he charged them, and said unto them, I am to be gathered unto my people. Bury me with my fathers in the cave that is in the field of Ephron the Hittite. And it's the old prophets, and in the old days, it seems a lot different when they're dying. Like, come on, let me die. I got to go now. I have to be gathered to my fathers. And they call it a pilgrimage. Seems to be some understanding that, like, you come from somewhere, you come into here, something you have to do, like a journey you have to make, and then you go back to somewhere. And Joseph brought in Jacob his father and set him before Pharaoh, and Jacob blessed Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said unto Jacob, it's like wherever they are, the blessing's there. Like, come into a house, let your blessing come upon it. Or if they don't accept you, take your blessing with you. Leave, shake the dust off your feet. And like Laban's blessed when Jacob's there. And Pharaoh said unto Jacob, how old art thou? And Jacob said unto Pharaoh, the days of the years of my pilgrimage are 130 years. Few and evil have the days of the years of my life been, have not attained unto the years of the life of my fathers, and the days of their pilgrimage. And Jacob blessed Pharaoh and went out from before Pharaoh. So where the ass speaks is a story about Balaam and Balak in Numbers 22. And if you look it up, I don't have like the dictionary picture, but it says the meaning of the name Balaam is bit to bridle, and the ass is prominent, significant in the story. And if you think about it, it's like it's what controls the ass, bit to bridle, controlling the ass, and he's like a bad guy, you know? But he's like a wise man of understanding. And bit to bridle, it's like, yeah, to control it, but also like prevent it from speaking, like the bit in its mouth, bridle in its mouth, like preventing it from speaking. I also thought it was funny, interesting that Balaam without the vowels is BLM, and Balak is anagram for cabal. BLM, cabal, cast a stumbling block. And with this, the MeWe set in the B13 conversion, like that name Kamala, you know, with this simple MB conversion, 1313 Kamala, Kabbalah, it's like just a simple one letter conversion with the B as 13, Kabbalah. And they came to Balaam and said to him, Thus saith Balak the son of Zippor, Let nothing, I pray thee, hinder thee from coming unto me. For I will promote thee unto very great honor, and I will do whatsoever thou sayest unto me. Come therefore, I pray thee, curse me this people. And Balaam answered and said unto the servants of Balak, If Balak would give me his house full of silver and gold, I cannot go beyond the word of the Lord my God to do less or more. So Balaam's not like a good guy, but he can't go beyond the word of the Lord. And God's anger was kindled because he went, and the angel of the Lord stood in the way for an adversary against him. Now he was riding upon his ass, and his 2 servants were with him. And the ass saw the angel of the Lord standing in the way, and his sword drawn in his hand. And the ass turned aside out of the way, and went into the field. And Balaam smote the ass to turn her into the way. But the angel of the Lord stood in a path of the vineyards, a wall being on this side and a wall on that side. It's like the straight, narrow gate, straight path, narrow gate. And when the ass saw the angel of the Lord, she thrust herself under the wall and crushed Balaam's foot against the wall. And he smote her again. It's like the sole of the foot, the soul. And the angel of the Lord went further and stood in a narrow place, where was no way to turn, either to the right hand or to the left, like no avoiding it. There's really only one way the ass is going to go. And when the ass saw the angel of the Lord, she fell down under Balaam. And Balaam's anger was kindled, and he smote the ass with a staff. And the Lord opened the mouth of the ass, like the Lord speaks through the symbolic tradition. That's what I think. And the Lord opened the mouth of the ass, and she said unto Balaam, What have I done unto thee that thou hast smitten me these 3 times? It's always 3 times. Like Peter denies Christ 3 times. Paul, what's the verse? 2 Corinthians 11:25. Thrice was I beaten with rods, once was I stoned, thrice I suffered shipwreck. A night and a day I have been in the deep. Also reminds me of like processing wheat, like beating it and grinding it to stone and washing it. What is that? What have I done unto thee that thou hast smitten me these 3 times? And Balaam said unto the ass, Because thou hast mocked me. And Balaam said unto the angel of the Lord, I have sinned, for I knew not that thou stoodest in the way against me. Did I miss one? And Balaam said unto the angel of the Lord, I have sinned, for I knew not that thou stoodest in the way against me. Now therefore, if it displease thee, I will get me back again. And the angel of the Lord said unto Balaam, Go with the men, but only the word that I shall speak unto thee, that thou shalt speak. So Balaam went with the princes of Balak. So he lets them go. He lets them ride on the ass. Lets them go, but he can only speak that I shall speak unto thee, that thou shalt speak. He can't do anything else. Like, he can ride the ass, but it's really all under control. And Balaam said unto Balak, Spake I not also to thy messengers which thou sentest unto me, saying, I cannot go beyond, if Balak would give me his house full of silver and gold, I cannot go beyond the commandment of the Lord, to do either good or bad of mine own mind. But what the Lord saith, that will I speak. And he took up his parable, symbolic story. And he took up his parable and said, Balaam, the son of Beor, hath said, and the man whose eyes are open hath said, he hath said which heard the words of God, and knew the knowledge of the Most High, which saw the vision of the Almighty, falling into a trance, but having his eyes open. I shall see him, but not now. I shall behold him, but not nigh. There shall come a star out of Jacob, and a scepter shall rise out of Israel, and shall smite the corners of Moab, and destroy all the children of Sheth. So it's like Set or something. Set. Destroy all the children of Sheth, the corners of Moab. It makes me think again of like the point, the meaning, the point. In this Absalom story, I'm just going to kind of skip around and take little snippets out because it's pretty long and it's spread across a few chapters. But basically the way it starts out is Amnon, who I believe is the oldest son of David, rapes his sister, Absalom's full sister, his half-sister Tamar, and Absalom murders him. But it also puts him in succession to be king, I believe. And he runs away, but they let him come back after a few years. David sends him, brings him back. And he's good for a while, but after he's been back a few years, and it's like pretty much where we pick up. Oh, and also he's known for his hair. So he says he pilled his head every year, and it was 200 shekels of hair, and it's like a symbol of pride. But the strength, the lion, pride, also like Samson. Like, it's real big on his hair, and it also factors into, like, him getting killed, hanged in the oak, pulled off the ass, like, something to do with his hair. This symbol of pride. And it's just so funny, because I was looking for this one little clip in Point Break, just because I wanted this one clip to use about, like, Joab, where it says, I hate violence. Rosie's just a mechanism, man. About Joab. Joab's not a good dude, but everything works towards a good end. Like, Joab does bad things, but it's just kind of what has to happen for the story. Like, he knows not what he does.
I hate this, Johnny. I really do. I hate violence. Don't you see that's why I need Rosie? But Rosie is a mechanism, you know. Once you set him in motion, he will not stop. He's like got this gift of blankness.
But anyway, while I was looking for that clip in Point Break, I saw this other part, and I remembered that just like in the Absalom story, he gets caught by his hair, or his pride, the hair. Which is also like the story of the cock and the fox. And the fox has to cry out or something in victory, and the cock gets away. But these guys he catches them supposedly by their hair. From all the bank robberies, he finds one single piece of hair, and he analyzes it, and it says, oh, the beaches are always blocked because of toxic waste spills, which is like access to the water of life, or to the like knowledge or something, blocked by the filth, the dung, the unclean overlay. And they show this computer markup, arsenic, arse, on that's how he catches them, by their hair. It's just so weird. I'll show you the clip.
Toxins in the hair. Selenium, titanium, and arsenic. The beaches are always being closed because of waste spills, right? Arsenic. The beaches are
33.
Lab is showing traces of toxins in the hair. Selenium, titanium, and arsenic. The beaches are always being closed because of waste spills.
Yeah, this is the screenshot from Point Break, and just completely randomly, going to get that other clip, just stop for 1 second in the middle of the movie, and just got this. Just matches perfectly. Arse. Ass. Number 33. And look, it's pointing to the red. See how it's like green, orange, red, blue? It's pointing to the red. Arsenic. AS2. S backwards, ass. Number 33. Like, what? Crazy. Just pop up everywhere. So Absalom sits in the gate, and it was so that when any man that had a controversy came to the king for judgment, then Absalom called unto him, and said, Of what city art thou? And he said, Thy servant is of one of the tribes of Israel. And Absalom said unto him, See, thy matters are good and right, but there is no man deputed of the king to hear thee. Absalom said moreover, Oh, that I were made judge in the land, that every man which hath any suit or cause might come unto me, and I would do him justice. And it was so that when any man came nigh unto him to do him obeisance, he put forth his hand and took him and kissed him. And on this manner did Absalom to all Israel that came to the king for judgment. So Absalom stole the hearts of the men of Israel. So like before they can get to David to have judgment, he's in the gate like, oh, there's no one to judge. Like, but I think it's also because David's pretty wise. And he knows you can't force all these things. It's better to sort of let them work themselves out. You don't always exert your force unless it's really necessary. But Absalom is like justice. He like, I murdered this rapist. Like, and if I was judge, I'd set things right. But it's like that pride of like thinking you know best and how things should be, and that you can materially wrestle the world right. He's like an antichrist prototype, or type, whatever. He also gets sealed in a great pit in the wood and covered, great stones cast on him, bound in the pit. His name means Father of Peace, Absalom. Like, but it's, you know, the Antichrist comes as a man of peace. It's like fake peace. So I'm skipping ahead, but basically he has a conspiracy, Absalom, and drives David out of Jerusalem. He's going to kill them all. And so David's really sad, and it's just like Jesus before going up to Mount of Olives. And David went up by the ascent of Mount Olivet and wept as he went up, and had his head covered, and he went barefoot. And all the people that was with him covered every man his head, and they went up weeping as they went up. And one told David, saying, Ahithophel is among the conspirators with Absalom. And David said, O Lord, I pray thee, turn the counsel of Ahithophel into foolishness. And Ahithophel is like, it says, his counsel to Absalom and to David was as the oracle of God in those days. He's like Balaam. It's like he's not a good guy. He's in the conspiracy with them, but it's all like serving this story, like the Deus ex machina in the story perfectly. And he's kind of like Judas betraying Jesus, like following Satan, following Absalom. And he hangs himself as well. I'll show that. Now here with the asses. And when David was a little past the top of the hill, behold, Ziba, the servant of Mephibosheth, met him with a couple of asses saddled, and upon them 200 loaves of bread, and 100 bunches of raisins, and 100 of summer fruits, and a bottle of wine. And the king said unto Ziba, What meanest thou by these? And Ziba said, The asses be for the king's household to ride on, and the bread and summer fruit for the young men to eat, and the wine that such as be faint in the wilderness may drink. So that's like the wine is the spirit, just one spirit. It's only one bottle of wine. 200 loaves of bread. I think of bread like wisdom. On the two asses, the ass and the colt, the foal of an ass. 200 loaves of bread. 100 raisins, 100 summer fruits, like old fruit and new fruit. Like Jesus says, a scribe instructed in the kingdom of heaven is like a householder that brings out of his brings out treasures new and old. Like you can teach the old parables, or you can make up new parables. Like because you see the pattern, you see the seed. It's like Old Testament, New Testament. There's 200 loaves of bread, 100 raisins, 100 fresh fruit, old fruit, new fruit.
Oh, bread. It looks great. Everything looks great. 124.
So, I don't know what he says here, but it sounds like he says bread to the homeless guy who's a wino, the bottle of wine. It says California, summer fruits, and it says raisins right on the bench. And I don't know if that is, it sounds like he says bread. And then you see it says this, it's also like the summer fruits, like that. You know what I mean? XXX. It's always the unclean overlay. California, raisins. He says bread, the bottle of wine, summer fruits. It sounds like he says bread. I don't know what he says. Brett or bread, but that's what it sounds like.
Oh, Brett. You look great. Brett. 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 You look great. Everything looks great. 124.
It's also like, you know, before he thought it was awful, but it's like he goes to a worse reality, and now everything looks amazing, even though it's just like it was. Like, because there just has to be an adversary. That's what makes it experience. There has to be adversity. Now it looks great to him, but it reminds me of this: the bread, the raisins, bottle of wine, 100 summer fruits, the 2 asses saddled. Even that, like the 2 asses, like it reminds me of like the unclean overlay is like the porno theater, like, because there's always like this. It's also, that's funny because that's Balaam's curse, is like he cast the stumbling block in front of Israel, which is like fornication and sacrifice to idols. Like, that's like the unclean overlay of the symbols. It's always this like dung covering, fornication, and idol worship. Like, that's the symbols are always mixed in with it. So Jesus rides the 2 asses down from the Mount of Olives, and David goes crying up to the Mount of Olives, and the 2 asses. Upon him 200 loaves of bread, 100 bunches of raisins, 100 summer fruits, and a bottle of wine. And Ahithophel, who reminds me of Judas, and when Ahithophel saw that his counsel was not followed, he saddled his ass and arose and gat him to his house, to his city, and put his household in order, and hanged himself, and died, and was buried in the sepulchre of his father. And then there's the battle, where Absalom is chasing after David. So the people went out into the field against Israel, and the battle was in the wood of Ephraim, where the people of Israel were slain before the servants of David. And there was there a great slaughter that day of 20,000 men. For the battle was there scattered over the face of all the country, and the wood devoured more people that day than the sword devoured. So it's like the trees are like with the Lord, the environment, the whole environment like conspires to make things go the way they're supposed to go. The wood devoured more people that day than the sword devoured, like the Ents at the end of Lord of the Rings. And it reminds me of this too, earlier when David's going up against the Philistines. Let it be when thou hearest the sound of a going in the tops of the mulberry trees, that then thou shalt bestir thyself, for then shalt the Lord go out before thee to smite the host of the Philistines. Like the Lord is like a movement in the trees. That's how like they perceive the Lord. And Absalom met the servants of David, and Absalom rode upon a mule, and the mule went under the thick boughs of a great oak, and his head caught hold of the oak, and he was taken up between the heaven and the earth. And the mule that was under him went away. And a certain man saw it, and told Joab, and said, Behold, I saw Absalom hanged in an oak. So it's like the ass, he's riding on the ass, trying to become king. But like the ass, like Balaam's ass, he can't say anything, he can't go anywhere he's not supposed to. And the oak together, like with his hair, his pride, all conspire together to pull him, hang him on the oak, pull him off the mule and kill him. And this is Joab, and he's hanging from the oak, and he took 3 darts in his hand, again at the 3 times. And he took 3 darts in his hand and thrust them through the heart of Absalom while he was yet alive in the midst of the oak. And 10 young men that bare Joab's armor compassed about and smote Absalom and slew him.
But Rosie is a mechanism.
And they took Absalom and cast him into a great pit in the wood, and laid a very great heap of stones upon him. And all Israel fled, every one to his tent. Now Absalom in his lifetime had taken and reared up for himself a pillar, which is in the king's dale. For he said, I have no son to keep my name in remembrance. It's like the pride, and that's the broken pillar, Absalom's pillar. And he called the pillar after his own name, and it is called unto this day Absalom's place. It's like he's cast into a great pit, like in Revelation, bound in the pit. And that's like his pillar, the broken pillar, the pride. Like Solomon rears up the Jacqueline and Boaz, solar and lunar pillar, and this is like Absalom's pillar, the broken middle pillar. So Absalom's killed, David comes back, and then he puts Solomon on the mule. That's just the way it's supposed to go. 33. 1 Kings 1:33. The king also said unto them, Take with you the servants of your Lord, and cause Solomon my son to ride upon mine own mule, and bring him down to Gihon. And let Zadok the priest and Nathan the prophet anoint him there king over Israel, and blow ye with the trumpet, and say, God save King Solomon. It's cause Solomon my son to ride upon mine own mule. So Zadok the priest and Nathan the prophet and Benaiah the son of Jehoiada and the Cherethites and the Pelethites went down and caused Solomon to ride upon King David's mule and brought him to Gihon. And Zadok the priest took an horn of oil out of the tabernacle and anointed Solomon, son of David, just like Jesus is the son of David. Horn of plenty. Took the horn of oil and anointed Solomon, and they blew the trumpet, and all the people said, God save King Solomon. And all the people came up after him, and the people piped with pipes and rejoiced with great joy, so that the earth rent with the sound of them. It's like I don't know. It's also like when Jesus is crucified and the earth's rent and the veil of the temple's rent in twain. And is that something, what are they playing? The pipes and the sound of the pipes, or is it like some real sound thing, some crazy pipe cymatics stuff? And this is just about the two pillars. And King Solomon sent and fetched Hiram out of Tyre, for he was a widow's son of the tribe of Naphtali, a hind, a red deer let loose. He was a widow's son of the tribe of Naphtali. He speaketh goodly words. And his father was a man of Tyre, a worker in brass. And he was filled with wisdom and understanding and cunning to work all works in brass. And he came to King Solomon and wrought all his work. For he cast 2 pillars of brass of 18 cubits high apiece, and a line of 12 cubits did compass either of them about. And he made 2 chapiters of molten brass to set upon the tops of the pillars. The height of the one chapiter was 5 cubits, and the height of the other chapiter was 5 cubits. And nets of checker work and wreaths of chain work. It's like the checkerboard pattern, you know? Nets of the matrix, nets of checker work and wreaths of chain work for the chapiters, which were upon the top of the pillars. 7 for the one chapiter and 7 for the other chapiter. So you got 2 of the 7s. And he made the pillars and 2 rows round about upon the one network to cover the chapiters that were upon the top with pomegranates. It's like the fresh fruit and the raisins. So he did for the other chapiter. And the chapiters that were upon the top of the pillars were of lily work in the porch, 4 cubits. And the chapiters upon the 2 pillars had pomegranates also above, over against the belly which was by the network. And the pomegranates were 200 in rows round about upon the other chapiter, like the 100 raisins and the 100 fresh fruits. And he set up the pillars in the porch of the temple. And he, like again, Solomon's porch. And he set up the east gate, the beauty gate, the water gate, where Christ has to enter back in. And he set up the right pillar and called the name thereof Jachin. And he set up the left pillar and called the name thereof Boaz, the lunar pillar, Boaz, the Boaz constrictor. And the last thing I'm going to show is it's something when I was working on this, thinking about the ass, the mule symbolism. It was one of those things where it just kind of, the book fell open to the right page, and I was like, wow, this really kind of ties the room together. This rug really ties the whole room together. It's from the Krishna book, and the Krishna stories kind of remind me of like the Solomon version, Son of David prototype, because it's like similar, like material excess, like the material path taken as far as it can. Everything's gold, and same like 1,000 wives and all the like material satisfaction. And this is from this book, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And I want to do a video sometime just about the picture on the cover of this. It's so crazy what's in this picture. And it's not, I don't think, it's not like a direct translation, but it just says Krishna is a summary study of the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Summary study of the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay, I know it's hard to read, but I'm just going to read it. To address them on behalf of all the kings. When Krishna began to speak, all became silent, being eager to hear and understand his welcoming words to the sages. Lord Krishna spoke thus, all glories to the assembled sages and ascetics. Today we are all feeling that our lives have become successful. Today we have achieved the desired goal of life, because we are now seeing face to face all the exalted, liberated sages and ascetics, whom even the great demigods in the heavens desire to see. Persons who are neophytes in devotional service and who simply offer their respectful obeisances to the deity in the temple, but cannot realize that the Lord is situated in everyone's heart, and those who simply worship different demigods for fulfillment of their own lusty desires, are unable to understand the importance of these sages. They cannot take advantage of receiving these sages by seeing them with their eyes, by touching their lotus feet, by inquiring about their welfare, or by diligently worshiping them. Neophyte devotees or religionists cannot understand the importance of the great Mahatmas. They go to the temple as a matter of formality and pay their respectful obeisances unto the deity. When one is promoted to the next platform of trance consciousness, one can understand the importance of Mahatmas and devotees, and in that stage the devotee tries to please them. Therefore, Lord Krishna said that the neophyte cannot understand the importance of great sages, devotees, or ascetics. And I think you could even understand this, like people that are like, I don't like Paul, I don't trust Paul, just Jesus. But it's like there has to be a transmission, like the golden thread, the living word. It has to go through people. Like there's a couple parts in Acts where people have been baptized in the name of Jesus, but they don't have the Holy Ghost. And they have to like get laid hands on by someone, Paul, and be really taught, or somehow it's something separate that happens. It's not just like, okay, yeah, I'm baptized, I believe. Like it has to come with some sort of understanding. And the other people are important. They are all in Christ, part of that, like Paul and Peter and John and everyone else. And I think you can relate that similarly to like the great Mahatmas, sages, devotees. Krishna continued, one cannot purify himself by traveling to holy places of pilgrimage and taking bath there, or by seeing the deities in the temples. But if one happens to meet a great devotee, a Mahatma, who is a representative of the personality of Godhead, one becomes immediately purified. In order to become purified, there is the injunction to worship the fire, the sun, the moon, the earth, the water, the air, the sky, and the mind. By worshiping all the elements and their predominating deities, one can become free from the influence of envy. But all the sins of an envious person can be nullified immediately, simply by serving a great soul. My dear revered sages and respectable kings, you can take it from me that a person who accepts this material body made of 3 elements, mucus, bile, and air, as his own self, who considers his family and relatives as his own, and who accepts material things as worshipable, or who visits holy places of pilgrimage just to take a bath there but never associates with great personalities, sages, and Mahatmas, such a person, even in the form of a human being, is nothing but an animal, like an ass. So we have the symbol here of the ass. And he's saying the religious people that follow dogmatically go on their pilgrimages just to impress people or to look good or for material gain. They're like the ass. But also they're preserving the symbols. And in their pilgrimages, they're carrying them and spreading them all different places, you know, in all different times. They're like this beast of burden, not understanding, but like carrying it on. You know, the symbolic traditions. When the supreme authority, Lord Krishna, was thus speaking with great gravity, all the sages and ascetics remained in dead silence. They became amazed upon hearing him speak the absolute philosophy of life in such a concise way. Unless one is very much advanced in knowledge, one thinks his body to be his self, his family members to be his kith and kin, and the land of his birth to be worshipable. From this concept of life, the modern ideology of nationalism has sprung up. Lord Krishna condemned such ideas. He also condemned persons who take the trouble to go to holy places of pilgrimage, just to take a bath and come back without taking the opportunity to associate with the great devotees and Mahatmas living there. Such persons are compared to the most foolish animal, the ass. All those who heard considered the speech of Lord Krishna for some time, and they concluded that Lord Krishna was actually the Supreme Personality of Godhead, playing the role of an ordinary human being who was forced to take a certain type of body as a result of the reactions of his past deeds. He was assuming this pastime as an ordinary human simply to teach the people in general how they should live for perfection of the human mission. Having concluded that Krishna was the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the sages began to address him thus: Dear Lord, we, the leaders of human society, the leaders of human society, are supposed to possess the proper philosophy of life, and yet we are becoming bewildered by the spell of your external energy. We are surprised to see your behavior, which is just like that of an ordinary human being, and which conceals your real identity as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We therefore consider your pastimes to be all wonderful. So I think that's the last piece I have for the ass symbolizing symbolic tradition, which the rulers ride on. And like I did in the last video, the unclean overlay over all these symbols. But, you know, the builders, the rulers who are riding on this ass, the secret, you know, whatever you want to call it, the builders, they serve a purpose. It's like a beast of burden. They preserve the symbols. Even though the wicked don't understand, the wise will understand. Like, it transmits the symbols through time. So do the people that you want to wake up, like these religious people or these dogmatic, scientific, atheist people, like, or these, but they're preserving ideas and they're preserving traditions for people that can use them. And I think that is the symbol of the ass. Like, people who accept material things as worshipable, or who visit holy places of pilgrimage just to take a bath there, but never associates with the great personalities, sages, and Mahatmas. Such a person, even in the form of a human being, is nothing but an animal, like an ass.
And finally, I looked in the mirror. Not just in the mirror. I looked through the mirror. In that image, I saw my ego reflection. Looked in the mirror. Not just in the mirror. I looked through the mirror. I looked through the mirror. Through the mirror.
How can you do that?
I can do anything I want. So can you.
Does that look clean to you?
Nothing's clean, Howard. But we do our best, right?
Does that look clean to you?
Nothing's clean, Howard. But we do our best, right?